Shayantan, uh, whenever you arrange these meetings, make sure that only the faculty members are the presenters. The students should all be attendees.
Yes, sir. Uh, uh, I was. Uh, yes, sir. Sure, sir.
Yeah.
I think we can start slowly, and others may join subsequently. So basically, before I start discussing on multi-party, multi-dimensional, multi-criteria decision making in economics, I would just like one of you to quickly summarize, maybe in 4 or 5 sentences, what we discussed in the previous class, me and PPC sir. I basically talked about certain perspectives uh, from economics point of view, and PPC sir basically talked about the tools and techniques that can be used in solving the related problems. So there were basically two domains. Uh, One was economics, another was AI. My question to you, or maybe just if some of you, if not one, two or three of you, can quickly summarize what we discussed in the previous class.
So we
Because,
discussed, first of all,
yeah, please
can I
go ahead.
go?
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Yes. So first of all, we discussed the decision-making issues like benefits from alternative options or individual preference ordering. And then there were some examples like allocation of land across alternative users or construction of a bridge, etc., and making strategic decisions. Then there was perspectives like enhancing productivity and efficiency, etc., and creation of new products and services. And finally, we had decision making problems in economics and solution approaches to it, like case studies in public policy design, modeling risk, etc. And then there was the AI part, which if anyone else wants, they can.
Basically, how we can address these decision making problems by using AI techniques, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
So any other point anybody would like to add? If not, then what basically I'll do, I'll quickly highlight certain cases. 2-3 cases I'll highlight first, and then I'll go for formulating the problem. Suppose in a market, we talk about the demand function, and also we talk about the supply function. We say that the demand curve is negatively sloped and the supply curve is positively sloped. And when the demand curve intersects the supply curve, we say that the market is in equilibrium. And accordingly, the equilibrium output, equilibrium quantity, and equilibrium price both are determined. Now here there are certain underlying assumptions. I'm not getting into the detail, but what essentially I am trying to tell here is that if you see the demand function, it is negatively sloped. And if you see any point along the demand function from the quantity axis, that is the horizontal axis, it basically says the maximum price that the consumers are ready to pay for a given quantity. So any vertical line connecting a point along the demand curve with the horizontal axis, a particular quantity along the horizontal axis, basically represents the maximum price that the consumers are ready to pay. On the other hand, a particular point along the supply function corresponding to a given quantity basically represents the minimum price that the sellers expect. And here is the difference. For a given quantity, while the point along the demand curve represents maximum price that the consumers are ready to pay, for the supply function or the supply curve, it represents the minimum price that the sellers expect. Now, why there is difference like this? The difference is because of the difference in objective function. While the consumers aim at maximizing utility, the suppliers aim at maximizing profit. So to maximize utility, consumers would try to pay, wherever it is possible, as less price as possible, so that with their given income they can buy more, and in the process they can enhance their utility. On the other hand, for suppliers, they basically try to get as much price as possible for the product so that they can maximize profit. Now in economics, under what we assume, basically we assume that there is perfect competition in the market. We assume that for individual seller or individual consumers, the prices are given, and it is the market that basically determines through intersection of the demand and supply function where the equilibrium point would be located and what would be the equilibrium price and quantity. Now again, perfect competition in economics, we say that this is a hypothetical situation. Perfect competition is a hypothetical situation, and we have information asymmetry, we have information imperfections, we have incompleteness in many cases in respect of information, and in the process it's very difficult to arrive at an equilibrium situation. But one thing is still valid, that is the firms aim at maximizing profit, whereas the consumers aim at maximizing utility. So the consumers.
Sir, sorry to interrupt. Sorry, sir.
Less price.
Sir.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Are you showing some graphs?
No. I'll be scrolling. I'm just.
Actually, only one slide is visible. The second slide.
Okay. I'll get into that. I'm not changing the slide.
Okay. Sir.
I'll change. So basically, this is the situation that consumer, the objective of maximizing utility, so they would like to pay as less price as possible. Producers have the objective of maximizing profit, so they will try to get as high price as possible. So there will be some degree of conflicts, and we say that the market basically decides through equilibrium what will be the equilibrium price and quantity. But as I said, because perfect competition is a hypothetical situation and it's very difficult to arrive at any equilibrium situation, so this is a very, very difficult situation to arrive at. And here we say that in many cases what happens, the governments even intervene at different levels to regulate the price, to regulate the quantity, and have some decisions for the market. So government interventions in many cases become very, very important. Now here, this particular matrix is showing a specific situation, that is allocation of land across alternative uses. What I'm doing here, I'm basically assuming three situations, means three alternative use of land. One is it can be used for agriculture purpose, second industries, setting factories, basically, and third one is basically development of infrastructure. And when we say agriculture sector, the primary stakeholder, I'm assuming that it is the farmers. For industry sector, it is the farm or the industry sector as a whole, and for infrastructure, it is people. Now, what are the benefits for the farmers from agriculture? There may be many benefits. I'm just highlighting a few. Definitely, the farmers would like to have as much land as possible in agriculture allocated. I'm just assuming here that the government allocates the land. As much land is allocated by the government for agriculture, because this will increase output and farm income. But in economics, we also see the interlinkages between agriculture and industry. So even if higher land allocation toward agriculture benefits the farmers, even the farmers get benefits from industry sector also. So when the industry sector grows, the benefits of that growth are percolated to the farmers also, particularly in terms of market for waste goods. Basically what the industrial workers buy, right? So as the industry sector expands, as the industry sector grows, there will be larger demand for agricultural commodities. One is in respect of wage goods, what the industrial workers buy and consume. Another is inputs for agro-based industries, like say jute, cotton textiles, food products, etc. Now, higher allocation of land for infrastructure, it can benefit the farmers also. Like with development in infrastructure like irrigation and all, definitely the farmers will be benefited. With cold storage facilities, definitely the farmers will be benefited. Good roads will provide greater access to both input and output markets for the farmers. So when land is allocated for agriculture sector, definitely the farmers are benefited, but the farmers are also benefited when the lands are allocated for industry or for development of infrastructure, right? Similarly, when I come to the industry sector, higher allocation of land for setting up factories, etc., would definitely increase industrial output. It will give higher profit to the farm because their production will expand, growth will take place, and they will earn higher profit. So it will definitely benefit the farmers. But at the same time, because of the interlinkages, the farmers, the farms will also be benefited when land is allocated for agriculture sector. Like say, growth of agriculture sector would actually develop the market for industrial output. At the same time, the farmers will also source many of their inputs from industry sector. say for example fertilizers, chemical fertilizers, say pesticide, agri equipments, farm machinery, etc. So the interlinkages between agriculture and industry sector basically suggest that when more land is allocated toward industry sector, definitely the industry sector is benefited, but at the same time allocation of land toward the agriculture sector also benefits the farms. At the same time, with allocation of land for development of infrastructure like construction of roads, bridges, etc., power station, etc., all these help in facilitating growth of the industry sector through greater production facilities and greater market access. Now, let us think of the other stakeholder, like the people. When agriculture sector grows, people are benefited in terms of getting food grains, having food security, nutrition, etc. I'm here assuming that the people that we are talking about are basically the consumers, the users. Even a farmer can have dual identity. A farmer is a producer, a farmer is also a consumer or user of certain facilities. A farmer is also a consumer of goods and services. A farmer is also a user of various facilities in respect of infrastructure, etc. So when agriculture sector grows, the farmers are benefited not only as producer, the farmers are also benefited as consumers, because a part of agricultural production is also used for self-consumption. In addition to farmers, other consumers are also benefited in respect of food security, nutrition, etc. In respect of industry sector, growth of industry sector actually creates non-farm employment opportunities, right? And we say that agriculture sector in many cases faces the problem of disguised unemployment, and so when the industry sector grows, the surplus workforce is transferred from agriculture sector to industry sector. Growth of industry sector also ensures or enhances supply of food and non-food items. And when infrastructure develops, people are benefited through better access to goods and services, and hence improvement in their quality of life. Now, when the government makes the allocation decisions, government have certain priorities. Government may have certain priorities. The government for agriculture sector, the government may look at food security. The government may look at growth of the agriculture sector, and also hence for the economy as a whole. Government may look at enhancing farm employment opportunities by diversifying the agri sector. As regards the industry, the government may aim at raising more revenue so that the revenue can be used for various welfare purposes. Government can aim at enhancing growth of the industry sector and creating non-farm employment opportunity. Remember, industrial production and sales are important sources of revenue for the government. And as far as infrastructure is concerned, government may look at expanding infrastructure facility to promote socio-economic activities. At the same time, the government may also have the concern of sustainability and hence maintaining ecological balance. Now, if you see this matrix very carefully, land is given. I am assuming that government allocates the land across different uses. There are diverse stakeholders, and every stakeholder has certain objective functions, including the government. And in some cases, the objective functions are interlinked, and in some cases, you can see there may be some degree of trade-off. Like if irrigation takes place by extracting groundwater, agricultural production will increase, but at the same time, it will result in depletion of groundwater level if the extraction is not compensated through groundwater recharge. So there may be certain trade-offs, there may be certain complementarity, but essentially in this matrix we are saying that there may be multiple objective functions and there are multiple stakeholders. Hence, the question is how to make the land allocation decision. If it is decided entirely by the market, maybe the issues will be different as compared to when the government makes the allocation decisions. And this may be a very, very important example to be explored when you go for designing AI algorithms. I'll stop for a while and I'll take your reactions, your comments on this particular matrix before I proceed to the next example. Any comment? Any observation? Hello? Do you have
Hello,
any?
sir.
Yes.
This is Priyanka. So I feel like all these stakeholders, like farmer, industry, and people, and this government, all these are interlinked. Like if one of these are benefited, like other may get benefited. Like if you increase the output, and then farmer income will increase, then correspondingly industry, you will get more products in the industry. And
Right.
if you increase the transport facilities, then also farmers get benefited.
Exactly. That's what I said. I mean, in many cases, we will see the complementarity, right?
Yes, sir.
But there may be some degree of trade-off also.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
What may be the trade-off if the growth of agriculture sector and industry sector, if they are not balanced?
Yes.
Say, for example, whatever you produce in farm sector, right? Where will that be sold? If growth of industry sector and agriculture sector, if that are not balanced,
yes,
then there may be surplus production in agriculture and there may not be sufficient demand for, say, food items.
Yeah, of course, sir.
Right?
Yes.
So expansion of industry sector actually creates market for wage goods. Similarly, if agriculture sector doesn't expand, and if we focus, say, for example, on industry, whatever are produced in industry sector, where those products will be sold, the market opportunity may be limited. Are you getting my point?
Yes, sir.
Second, as I said, now suppose you are allocating higher amount of land for agriculture purpose.
Yes, sir.
And to facilitate agricultural production, you need more chemical fertilizers. For example, definitely This will enhance growth of fertilizer industry. But at the same time, use of fertilizer more and more in agriculture may reduce farm productivity in future. Again, to use more of fertilizer, you need more water, and so more groundwater may be extracted, and if that is not compensated, it will cause ecological imbalance. So one is land allocation across different sectors. At the same time, the government may keep in mind the potential consequences. If, say, for example, industrial income, industrial sales are basically the sources of revenue for the government, then as more and more land is allocated toward industrial sector, maybe the government will get more and more revenue because industrial output will increase. In the process, the government will get more revenue. But at the same time, allocation of more land toward industry sector without enhancement in agri productivity or multiple cropping, means cropping intensity, there may be some degree of threat to food security. So it is a question of, you are right, absolutely right. This complementarity is very, very important. But at the same time, the question is how to make the decisions. And this decision making is important for complementarity also, not only because of the conflicts or trade-offs, but also for maintaining the or ensuring the complementarity, how to allocate the land across alternative uses. And this may be a very, very important problem to be explored when you go for designing AI algorithm. Am I right, Priyanka?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let us move to the next example. Another decision-making example, say the government wants to regulate mergers and acquisitions. Now, mergers and acquisitions are very, very important strategies for farms. But when we talk about the regulatory decisions, we need to understand what may be the implications for the farms and what may be the implications for the consumers. I'm just assuming that there are two sets of major players in the market, that is the farms and the consumers. And looking at the implications, or depending on the implications for the farms and the consumers, the government needs to decide the regulatory structure. Here, if I see from farms' point of view, we say that mergers and acquisitions can help the farms in achieving cost efficiency, in gaining market power, in sourcing technology. Suppose a domestic farm is being acquired by a foreign farm. So the domestic farm can now have access to the technology that the foreign farm owns. It may be similarly between two domestic farms also. Suppose one farm is having better technology as compared to the other farm, and if they come together, then the technology that these two farms, the one farm is having, can be shared by both the farms. Then mergers and acquisitions can also enhance export competitiveness. There are examples. In fact, in some of my works, I have seen that. Mergers and acquisitions can also help in developing vertical chain or diversifying the product basket, right? So for farms, there may be very, very important positive implications for the farms in respect of its objective of, say, for example, profit maximization. Of course, the farms also have certain concerns. In many cases, we have seen the mergers and acquisitions have been failure because it is a question of integrating two firms, and because of various differences, in many cases the integration may not be very successful. And you can see there are many examples of mergers and acquisitions being failures. It's not that all are simply benefits for the firms, but definitely there are many potential benefits for the firms, but also the firms may have certain concerns. What may be the potential implications for the consumers? The consumers may need to pay now lower price. The consumers may also need to pay higher price. If the firms can achieve cost efficiency through M&A, it is quite possible that at least in the short run, again I am repeating, at least in the short run, the firms may not increase the price. Rather, the price may decrease. You know, pricing strategy is a very, very important strategy. Basically to restrict entry of new firms into the market or to force other firms to leave the market. So in many cases, what may happen that the firms are achieving cost efficiency through M&A, and instead of charging higher price, they are lowering the price. Consumers are benefited. But in the long run, it may so happen that when the competitors are out of the market because of efficiency of these few firms, or entries are restricted, then these firms may start exercising their market power. And in the process, the consumers may now need to pay higher price. In many cases, mergers and acquisitions may also help in enhancing product quality. Another example may be say vertical integration, what basically enhances smooth supply of the products into the market, and hence the consumers are benefited. Again, the consumers may also have the concern of increasing monopoly power in the market and subsequently being forced to pay higher prices. Now, what may be the concerns or issues for the government? One is monopoly power. Second one is competitiveness, basically what may come through cost efficiency. And the third one may be consumers' welfare. But at the same time, the firms also need some profit to grow, to exist and grow in the business. So if we see from government's point of view, there may be certain objectives or issues. They may again be complementing each other and they may be contradicting also. Does it necessarily mean that the government should look at a composite objective function, assigning weights to different components? Like if mergers and acquisitions enhance export competitiveness, definitely that is a very, very positive outcome for the economy. But at the same time, if mergers and acquisitions reduce consumers' welfare, that is a matter of concern. Monopoly power. If monopoly power is exercised and higher price is charged, definitely this is a concern. But there are also evidences that monopoly power enhances innovation. If you see, there are some studies that have talked about the fact that the firms are more engaged in innovation, that is in-house R&D, when they enjoy monopoly power in the market. So my question here is, or again you can see this possibility while designing AI algorithm, if we should think of weighting these contradicting or complementary objectives. How to decide on the weights? That's a very, very different question altogether. You can explore large scale data. The weights may be data driven, the way we do in principal component analysis, say for example, in regression analysis, or maybe through expert opinion, there may be some other mechanisms. But an important exercise may be basically to think of constructing a composite objective function, basically to capture the diverse implications for diverse stakeholders. Here we are using the example of mergers and acquisitions to explain the same. Third example is basically crop choice decision by a farmer. This is again, suppose the land allocation decision is made by the government. Government has decided, okay, this much land would be allocated for agriculture purpose, this much would go for industry purpose, and this will be used for infrastructure development. And now suppose I own certain amount of land. How should I distribute that given land across alternative crops that I can cultivate? I'm assuming here that I can produce n number of crops under the given agroclimatic conditions, and I use land, water, labor, equipment, machinery, fertilizers, pesticides, etc. in the agricultural production process. Now, when as a farmer I make the crop choice decisions, I may have the objective of maximization of income. I can have the objective of minimization of production and market related risks. I may also have the objective of regular cash flow. Right? I want to cultivate a crop that will give me regular flow of returns. Say for example, potato is harvested once. You harvest, either you store it after that or you sell. Chili, say for example, it can be harvested quite a number of times. And I can harvest chili and sell in the market when I require cash. I'm just highlighting 3 objectives here. There may be many more. You can add more, but think of an individual farmer. If the farmers only aim at increasing farm income, then probably the decision is very simple. But if it is a combination of some objectives, like maximization of income, minimization of risks, or ensuring cash flow, then how to make the crop choice decisions? Remember, the farmer has given amount of land and water, labor, equipment, machinery, fertilizers, all are used in the production process. Even in many cases, farmers' crop choice decision may also be influenced by the nature of the crop, like whether it is perishable or it can be stored for some time. Because in many cases, the farmers lack the infrastructure for storing the product. So how should the farmer make land allocation decision or crop choice decision when there are n number of alternatives available? But there may be a combination of objectives or objective functions. Now, what may be the concerns or issues? In many cases, the government may motivate or incentivize the farmers to cultivate certain crops. And here the government may have certain objectives. Like one objective may be, say, conservation of natural resources. Like there are many crops that are highly water intensive, and the government may encourage, incentivize the farmers to cultivate certain, to promote cultivation of certain crops that are less water intensive. The government may also incentivize the farmers and provide various facilities to cultivate certain crops to ensure food and nutritional security. The government may aim at promoting certain crops that can engage more of women workforce to have inclusive growth in agriculture. It may also so happen that the government may aim at facilitating cultivation of certain crops that can strengthen agriculture industry linkages, what complementarity we were discussing in the very first example. Here, there are two potential questions that can be explored. How should the farmers make crop choice decisions? Right? How to integrate these objectives? Again, I'm saying when there is single objective of a player, the decision making is quite easier. But remember, I was giving an example in the very first class that suppose there are three farmers. One may aim at maximizing income, another may aim at minimizing the risks, and the third farmer may aim at ensuring regular cash flow. So the question here is how to integrate these diverse objectives. For a single farmer, it may not be a very difficult task, particularly when the farmer is having single objective, but definitely the government may have a very, very important role to play in guiding the farmers or designing the incentive mechanism that can fulfill these objectives or at least some of the objectives. So, two important questions are here. How should the farmers make crop choice decisions? What should be the driving forces? What may be the AI algorithm that can help the farmers to make appropriate crop choice? Remember one thing, the farmers may start with certain objectives, but there are certain risks, and in the process, there may be failures also. So, how to make appropriate crop choice decisions by the farmers, and again, an interesting task here would be to design the appropriate AI algorithm. And that should integrate the potential role of the government. And my last example here, combining the problem of allocation and distribution. There are some students of economics whom I had taught this portion in the course on public finance and policy. Pankhuri? Pankhuri? Hello? Anand? Anand, are you there? Anyway, I'm just explaining this situation like, say, there are two individuals, two farms, two goods, and let us that there is only one factor that is used in the production process. And let us assume that the two individuals are having utility functions and they aim at maximizing their utility subject to their respective budget constraints. So every individual here is having utility function and the budget constraint, and they aim at maximizing utility subject to the budget constraint, subject to the respective budget constraint. Now, let us assume that total production of X1, there are two commodities, X1 and X2. Total production of X1 is X1, which is equal to X11 and X12, the summation of the two. X11 is basically amount of X1 consumed by individual 1, and X12 is amount of X1 consumed by individual 2. Similarly, total production of X2 is X2, which is the summation of X21 and X22. Let us assume that there is only one factor that is used in the production of both X1 and X2, and that is R. Only one factor of production. So, if I assume that the stock of this resource is given at R0 and it is distributed across the two goods, X1 and X2 as R1 and R2, means R1 is allocated for production of X1 and R2 is allocated for production of X2. And let us assume that X1 is produced by farm 1 and X2 is produced by farm 2. Obviously then X1 becomes a function of R1 and X2 becomes a function of R2. But given that R is fixed at R0, and if I assume that the technology is given, then as R1 increases, R2 goes down, and as R1 increases, more of X1 is produced, and as in the process R2 goes down, less of X2 is produced. It may be other way also. So I can write X1 as a function of X2 and similarly X2 as a function of X1. So because of this resource constraint, as production of X2 increases because of higher allocation of land toward or other resource toward X2, production of X1 goes down, and similarly it can happen for X2 as well. So the question is how to allocate R0 for production of X1 and X2. Similar, to some extent similar problem we explained in the very first example, but there we only talked about the allocation decision. We didn't combine allocation decision with distribution decision. Somebody was talking about the distribution issue in the last class. And here basically I'm trying to combine the two. One is allocation of resources, then production will take place in the process, and finally whatever are produced, how to distribute that output across different individuals so that the individuals can maximize their utility subject to the budget constraint. Now, here what is happening? If R1 and R2 are decided at R1 bar and R2 bar, then the corresponding production will be given at X1 bar and X2 bar. So if somehow, maybe by the market forces, maybe by the government, if the resource is distributed between the two goods or between the two farms as R1 bar and R2 bar, then the production of the two goods would be fixed at X1 bar and X2 bar. Remember, I am assuming here that the technology is given. The technology is not changing. That means x1 bar would be now equal to x11 and x12, I mean plus x12, and similarly x2 bar would be equal to x21 plus x22. And here you can see as x11 increases, x12 goes down because x1 bar is given. Similarly, as x21 goes up, x22 goes down. Now in typical utility function, what do we assume? Given another commodity, as the consumer consumes more of a particular commodity, the consumer's utility increases. Right? So if individual 1 has more of x1, given the production of x1, obviously individual 2 will have less of x1. So given the distribution of x2, individual 1 will now have more utility and individual 2 will now have less utility. Obvious question here is how to distribute x1 bar and x2 bar between the two individuals. So here basically I am giving an example that combines the two decisions. One is allocation of resources across alternative uses, and another is distribution of output across the individuals. And again, combining these two perspectives may be a very, very important example to explore in AI. I mean, by using AI techniques. Okay, so I'll stop at this point, and if you have any question, any comment, any observation, you can ask. Thank you all. Any question?
Sir, hello. Am I
Yes.
audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Sir, so are there any existing methods for solving these problems using AI? Since like for land allocation, what would happen? Like we are considering farmers, like farmer, industry and infrastructure, right? So like
Right.
agriculture, we would need climate related data, all that for gaining, like for predicting profits according to each crop. And for industry we would like lots and lots of data would be required, like in different sectors, right, for every
Right.
sector. So like
Right.
is there any existing methods for getting this solving these problems?
See what I'm saying. In economics, we have several models that we solve there mathematically. But again, when we do it mathematically, basically, it is some degree of abstraction also, right? We make certain assumptions, we limit the problem set, and then we go for deriving the mathematical models. Like the last example that I talked about, we discussed in the course on public finance, like Pareto optimality. I don't know if anyone of you had this course. In that course we discussed, I mean, how to arrive at a solution, how to arrive at a condition that would basically result in optimum allocation of resources and at the same time optimum distribution of goods and services. So here data are available. You have data related to agriculture, you have data related to industry, you have data related to various climatic conditions or infrastructure. Now question is integrating this data, large scale data in fact, on different variables and then designing AI algorithm. I'm not, I cannot say anything on AI algorithm because that is not my area. But some subsets we analyze through econometric modeling, also through mathematical modeling. We derive certain conditions that can potentially address some of these problems. Like say, I'm telling you one example, as I said, the very last example basically relates to what we discussed in case of Pareto optimality. Like say this farmer's crop choice. In fact, in one of our studies, we tried to explore, we tried to design a bioeconomic modeling, basically by using linear programming approach, right? Combining agroclimatic conditions with socioeconomic conditions, and then trying to build different scenarios that can be presented to the farmers, and the farmers can make the decisions in the process. So some approaches are there, but why this may be very, very important for AI, because here you have the flexibility to use large scale data, unlike what we do in econometrics. There we have certain limitations also. Here you can combine the objective functions. So these sort of flexibilities are there. If I'm not wrong, I mean, Professor Mitra is here. He can comment. I mean, I would request you to highlight, I mean, if or how it can be done in AI algorithms. Professor Mitra?
I think Professor Parthapratim Chakravarti will cover these questions in details in the coming classes.
Yeah, right. So what I'll do then, I'll send these slides to PPC sir. And he can take, I mean, if it is possible, some of these examples can be taken and it can be explored when AI algorithms are designed. I mean, I don't know, I mean, I'll discuss with PPC sir, and I'll get back to you when we meet again on Friday.
I'm sure PPC sir will be discussing the algorithms in his part. So like maybe he can take up this particular example to base his discussions on. I think that
Exactly. Yeah. So this is what I'm also saying. I mean, I'll discuss with him, and if one or two of these examples can be taken during the designing of AI algorithms.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, can you provide something more detailed version of this one slide for these equations? Like,
okay, basically you are basically looking at the details of these equations.
yes, sir. So like,
okay.
For
yeah, sure. What I'll do, I'll basically I'll then make some WAR file. Slides will not be enough in that case. I'll write down in some WAR file and I'll upload.
Thank you, sir.
Any other question? Tell me one thing. I mean, are these examples convincing, or are these issues convincing for further discussions during yes. Your designing of AI algorithms?
Yes. Sir.
What do you feel?
Yes, sir.
Can you just, I talked about 4 examples. According to you, which one would be very, very important to discuss further? It may differ across students, but I'm just asking one of you if you can highlight what may be a very interesting example to work on further.
Sir, allocation of land resources. Sir.
Okay. I'll discuss with PPC sir, and if any AI mechanism can be designed in that line. Okay. Is there any other question, or else what I can do? I can stop today, and on Friday I have half an hour session where basically I'll speak for half an hour and PPC sir will speak for half an hour, and there probably he will talk about how these problems can be taken for AI. Okay. Should we stop now?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, yes.
From this slide itself. Sir, in the third last line, it's written that R0 is equals to R1 bar plus R2 bar.
Right.
And we are assuming that resource 1 is this bar variable is constant, right?
So basically here I'm saying that suppose allocation decision is made now as R1 bar and R2 bar.
Okay, sir. Yes.
See, if allocation decisions are made, if R1 is fixed at R1 bar and R2 is fixed at R2 bar, then X1 bar and X2 bar are also fixed now.
Yes, sir.
Because I am assuming here technology to be given.
Okay, so we are fixing R1 bar and R2 bar, and then we are and with respect to that, the outputs of those two resources will be fixated, right, sir?
Right. Let's just think of the very first example. There we talked about allocation of land across alternative uses. Now this decision is made as R1 bar and R2 bar. Now if technologies are given, then with given amount of resource, you can produce only a certain amount of output.
Yes, sir.
So now X1 bar and X2 bar are fixed.
Yes.
So with resource allocation R1 bar and R2 bar, output will be X1 bar and X2 bar.
Yes.
Now output is given now. Now think of the second last line. Output is given at X1 bar and X2 bar. And it is to be distributed between the two individuals as X11, X12 or X21 and X22. And remember, both the individuals aim at maximizing their utility. So they will aim at having as much of the output as possible.
Yes.
And how much they would be having, it depends on various factors like their income, access to market, etc.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Got it.
And that is why what somebody was talking about the other day, the distribution mechanism. So what the government does, part of the agricultural production is sold in the open market, food grains, and a part is distributed to lower income group households through PDS, public distribution system, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes.
To ensure food security, the government procures production output from the farmers and distributes it through government mechanism like the public distribution system.
Yes.
And partly it is sold in open market. Those who can afford, they buy it from the open market.
Right.
So here basically I am talking of a problem that combines the issue of resource allocation as well as distribution of output.
Okay, sir. Got it. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Yes. I'll write it down in little detail as somebody suggested, and I'll upload.
Sure, sir.
Tell me one more thing. This is the last point before we close the session. Professor Nayak is having a class on Monday, and one of his sessions is scheduled on Monday. Now, would it be possible for you just for one session to join the class, say maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday after 6 o'clock if you are free? Just one session. You think of it, you can let us know on Friday. Okay.
Sir, I have a class clashing with you. Embedded ML at 6 to 7.
When?
Tuesday.
No, what about Wednesday?
Wednesday I am free after 6, so we can have after 6.
Sir, I have a class on Wednesday from 5 to 7.
Okay, okay. Anyway, then we'll explore if it can be adjusted internally among us. Okay. So we can finalize it on Friday, and on Friday I would request Sayantan. We have actually prepared some some schedule for module 1 with date, topic, resource person and timeline. And also we are thinking of fixing the first class test on 6th of September, that is Monday. Okay, so that will be uploaded in the class after the class on Friday. Sayantan, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am there.
So once we finalize it, I think you have seen the schedule, right? That
yes,
lecture schedule that I circulated, no?
Yes, sir.
So maybe just one change we need to make in respect of Professor Nayak. I'll quickly do that and then I'll send it to you. You can upload it. They can have a look, and if they have any feedback, they can get back to me or you all on Friday. I think both you and Niladri also they can communicate. Okay. Okay. Thank you all, and let us meet on Friday. In between, what I'll do, I'll basically upload that mathematical equation, the details on that mathematical expressions. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.